Tonight, very excited, we've got Stephanie Gillin, the Information and Education Program Manager for the Confederated Tribes. She's going to tell us about some of the restoration that's going on down at the Bison Range. So, yeah, Stephanie has been a wildlife biologist for 21 years with the tribe's wildlife management program and has worked with students both on and off the reservation, educating them about wildlife and the tribe's cultural connection. And for the past year, she's been part of a working group at the Bison Range, helping to remodel the museum at the visitor center and tell some of the stories there. So, Stephanie, come on up, and thanks again for coming.
Thank you very much.
Give it a whirl here. Yeah, I advanced it for you, but go ahead, try.
There we go. Okay. So, Cheshchulu Pesiat, good evening, everyone. Stephanie Gillin, Louis West, and Chines Lemti Aihuti. So, my name is Stephanie Gillin, and I'm very thankful today. So, thank you for inviting me to Kalispell. It is only an hour away, but it was a nice drive. So, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I won't yell. And thank you for the introduction. So again, I am used to going and talking to elders, and before you even talk, they're like, who are you? Who's your family? So again, I was born and raised on the Flathead Indian Reservation, graduated from St. Ignatius High School, attended Montana State University because I wanted to get far enough away from home, but not too far. And then I graduated from University of Montana. One of my first jobs was probably one of my favorites. I did reptile and amphibian study on the reservation, so I got paid to do what I did as a kid, catch frogs and snakes, and all that fun stuff. Again, I was a wildlife biologist with our natural resources program, our tribal wildlife program, for 21 years. You guys have a new resident, my ex-boss, Dale Becker, now lives in Kalispell here. So very happy to have worked there for 21 years. I recently, within the last 3 years, and 3 years goes by fast, especially with the pandemic, I am the Information and Education Program Manager, which I love because education is one of my favorite things. I came from a very cultural family. This is a 4th-generation picture of my yaya, my grandmother, who passed when she was 94. So that was, I gathered as much information as I could from her. My mother, me, and my daughter. So, and she was 92 years old when she was on that horse. So she grew up riding in parades, and yeah, very, very, very happy to be a part of this family. I was raised very culturally. We still travel with our family drum group. We still dig bitterroot and do cultural activities, and both of my parents have been wonderful parents, and I thank them, and that's why I am here. And also, I'll kind of mention too the 3 yayas who were just honored we went to Helena, and they were just honored, and as one of the 3 yayas involved in helping to conserve our tribal Mission Mountain Tribal Wilderness area. So my great-grandmother is one of the 3 yayas. So I come from very strong Salish women. You can ask my husband, he'll tell you. he'll agree with that. So first and foremost, for the last year, I've been very fortunate. I love that my path has led me to the Bison Range the last year. I actually put in to be a biologist the 2nd AFA and was not, someone else was chosen, but I believe things happen for a reason. I was not meant to be there till this AFA. So one thing we did was work with our culture committees, and which was amazing, both our Salish, Ponderay, and then our Kalispell, and then our Kasanka, or our Kootenai culture committee as well. So we came together, and I was able to work with them on this project. But first and foremost, we definitely thank our elders and ancestors who have passed down this information for us, and then our culture committees who have done an amazing job in the last, they actually were the Salish Kalispell culture committee was formed the year I was born, so in 75. So they've done a nice job at producing information for us to use in what we used in the visitor center. So who has been to the Bison Range before? Nice. Who has been to the Bison Range within the last year? Okay. All right, so I encourage you to come and check out the visitor center because it took 13 months for us to remodel the visitor center. And it is our story told by us, which is super important. And that didn't hit me until we had our first school group come. Because again, I was born and raised on the Flathead Indian Reservation, but I did not learn my history in my classroom. So the first school groups that came, it was just like, you know, like a very full circle, very rewarding feeling for me. So super excited. So we do still follow our creation stories. We still do coyote stories. We actually, our culture committee, we're having an event next Thursday to tell coyote stories. We're still very cultural in believing we cannot tell those coyote stories unless there's snow on the ground. Climate change might have issues with that. So last year, I think it was last year, I had to call and say, you know, because we lost snow pretty fast. I'm like, what about now? And they're like, nope, only, you know, even though it's the winter, only when there's snow on the ground. So we're very good at following with our culture. Our creation stories, which I think is why I became a wildlife biologist, is we were raised and taught that animals were here before us. They prepared the land for us. Some of them volunteered to be food for us. So for that reason, we respect everything, especially the animals who give their life for us as food. We talk about one big thing, and I'll talk about that as well here in the slide. So kind of I'm giving you a kind of a virtual tour of the Bison Range. Oops. Sorry, of the Bison Range Visitor Center. But I want to start out with some language. So on one of our walls, and I'll talk about, it was important to me to start out with the 3 chiefs. So we are one of 8 reservations within the state of Montana, representing at least 12 different nations. So within our reservation alone, there are 3 different tribes. And I mentioned the Salish and the Kalispel, otherwise known as Ponderay. Ponderay is a French word meaning shelled earrings. So that was not who they knew themselves as, that's what they were called. And then the Kasenka is our Kootenai tribe, which is one band of Kootenai people that is down in our area. So our Salish and Kalispel language is very similar. So our dialects, you can hear, we're the innermost, most inland speaking Salish tribe. You can hear Salish from our area all the way to the coast. And so it's very similar dialect. Kasenka or Kootenai, very different. So in our Salish language, bison is kway kwai, which means many black because they once blanketed the prairies. And bear with me because I had to have our Kasenka Culture Committee, I had to record him saying bison in Kootenai because it is a lot. So kway kwai in Salish.
Kamku Okush Iyam.
That's bison in Kootenai. So that's why I had him record it. So so language is super important. Sadly, my grandmother was born in a teepee in 1922 near Dixon, Montana, which is where the Bison Range, near where the Bison Range is now. And Salish was her first language. Both of my parents were sent to boarding schools, and so within that one generation, I know words, I know phrases, but to form a sentence, you know, because it's not. It's not like English. So we just continue to learn. So that's actually my next job. I'm gonna learn the language and continue educating. One amazing thing about the bison range is, well, about bison in general, and we'll talk about that, but, and I'm sorry, I sent this slide in and it's kind of not in the right place, but our elders tell us that when the wild roses bloomed in late spring or early summer, they knew that bison calves were fattened up and it was time to go to the bison. So we would go do that twice a year. Just a fun fact. This is one of the main walls you'll see when you come into the bison range. We definitely, our little red calves are a fan favorite, a visitor favorite, and we have these because we do follow seasons. We do things and collect berries, collect roots during the certain times of year. We have these where we can change them out. Maybe next year we will be able to do that. I am very excited about going into this season because we have one season under our belt and we know what to expect, and I think we're ready for it. So it's pretty exciting to be here and to be involved. This is one map. You'll see our people who will greet you, our greeters. We actually have little animals that will set out on the map so you can see what people have seen throughout the day. So we have a lot of our employees who will go do the drive and they'll come back and report to us what we've seen. It was important to me to put this map on the wall because a lot of our visitors come from out of state, out of country, and they're like, we've seen maps talking about a reservation. Where is it? And we're like, you're on it. So we like to show, the bison range, which is not, not pink anymore, but now is tribally owned. So we like to show that where the visitor center is. So this is a wall I was talking about with our 3 chiefs. It talks about just shows representation of all 3 nations that are on our wall. So this is, the past, and this is kind of looking into our future. So we are people of vision, which is our motto. And so it just kind of talks about, this is the last wall that you'll see when you go through the visitor center. And it just talks about kind of our stewardship and our Class 1 watershed and our restoration projects and our, so much that we work hard on. Now we are in charge of what was formerly known as Kerr Dam, SKQ Dam. We run Mission Valley Power. So I mean, just kind of showing, what we are capable of, but in the importance of the path of teaching our generations to come. So on one of our first walls, after you see the chiefs, we come to this timeline, which is pretty amazing. It talks about one of our oldest archaeological sites dates back to almost 13,000 years ago, which is similar to when Glacial Lake Missoula was in their area. We also have a nice wall talking about Glacial Lake Missoula. It has that beautiful painting that shows, like when you're up all the way on top of Red Sleep, and it shows you the highest elevation of Glacial Lake Missoula. We have that, and we talk about the strand lines that you will see when you're driving towards, especially this time of year when the snow is almost melting. We talk about the potholes. So we have a picture showing the pothole prairies, ponds in the Nine Pipes area, because they're just amazing. You drive Highway 93 towards Ronan, you look out and it looks flat, but it is not. We've done so many bird surveys through that, and it's, just huge potholes, which is amazing. So we show that. So we just, talk a lot about Glacial Lake Missoula. This is an amazing map that was done through our culture committee, and it shows our Aboriginal territory, which at one time exceeded over 22 million acres. It went extended into eastern Washington, panhandled up Idaho, into Canada, and all of northwest Montana. It also shows something that is very amazing to me that I did not learn until I was out of school, because I wasn't taught in night school, but these are 2 reservations. So if you go back to our Treaty of 1855, there were actually 2 reservations. In that, there was such a large band of Bitterroot Salish, which my family is Bitterroot Salish, that would not leave the Bitterroot Valley. So Isaac Stevens decided we'll put 2 reservations and then we'll decide which one is best fitting for the tribes. And so we just had a dedication of the Bear Tracks Bridge, otherwise known as Higgins Bridge in Missoula. That just happened this year, and that actually marked the event of when the Bitterroot Salish were forced back onto the reservation, and that's where they crossed. So that was renamed Bear Track Bridge. But as soon as it took 36 years for the Bitterroot Salish to be moved out of the Bitterroot Valley, and as soon as that happened, they simply erased that reservation. The current reservation that we are on is 1.3 million acres. The Bitterroot Reservation was 1.7 million. So, and everyone knows what the Bitterroot Valley looks like now. It's pretty amazing. We still go to the Bitterroot Valley. That slide two times ago, we go twice a year, which simulates when we would go hunt bison. We visit a medicine tree down there, which is very historic. And other tribes used to visit that medicine tree. We still do that annually, again, twice a year, to give our offerings to the tree, to help us pray for a good year for our families and for ourselves. So we still continue to do that. This is one of my favorite walls because it's almost, they're both looking into your soul, I think. It just kind of talks about how our histories or how our relationship with bison were so intertwined. Bison remind me so much of Native people with, how much they've been through, but we're still here. It's amazing, this quote from Johnny R. Lee, which is one of our elders. It just talks about, it says, a lot of hardships that the buffalo went through, their lives are just so parallel with ours. The buffalo are strong. They've survived for all these years, and so have we. We are still going. Tell your children that we are here close to the buffalo, that we sang a song for him to honor him for his many years yet to come, and for our children, for our great-great-grandchildren, and all the generations yet to come, that they still have beauty around them, which is amazing. So that's how this hits me, it just talks about our deep respect and relationship. We do have a wall that talks about, not only did we depend on them spiritually, but also for materials. They helped us survive these hard winters, and we used as much as we could from them. This is just a wall that shows, the hides with the hair left on were definitely used, clothing, bedding, trading. The hides were scraped. Tools were used, so that's a bone that was used as a scraping tool for rawhide. It took 6 teepees or 6 hides to make a teepee. Bones were also used for needles and awls. Hides were tanned, and used for clothing and different materials. Hair was even collected and braided and used for rope. Even in the prairies, when there was no trees, they would use dung or scat, as a scientist, that was dried for several years as fire starter. This is the one I love to show kids because usually everyone's packing one of these, and we talk about how I usually go into how spoiled our generations are today, and talk about, this is our water bottle today, but that was, what you had to use to carry water. And usually the response is, ew. And the question is, how did they clean it? And I'm like, I'm sure they did. but yeah, that's what they use for water. So it's really, it's amazing what was used. Okay, so this is a wall that talks about the Hellgate Treaty. It talks about, this is an actual photo of the Bitterroot Salish leaving the Bitterroot Valley. It talks about our treaty being signed. Here's the actual picture of our treaty, and where our chiefs thought that we were going to Buffalo Commons to, solidify our relationship with the government. They did not understand that it was a conversation to talk about being forced onto reservations. This took 10 days, and less than a tenth was understood by either party. Some of the chiefs that did not, or the leadership that did not approve, did not sign, but their ex was signed for them. So it's kind of a pretty it's a very important wall, I think, to talk about. This is also, and again, sorry, I'm not in the museum, but this is a booklet that our culture committees came out with, and with that timeline, I talk about how everyone thinks that everything happened when Lewis and Clark came, and we, because it was all written down or shot and identified, but we were, oral history, we were, it passed down from generation to generation. So in 75, when our culture committees were formed, they started recording, they started videoing, they started, and all of it was in the Salish language. So that was one of my grandmother's jobs. She worked until she was 89, and she was a translator because her first language was Salish. So she would listen to it and write it down as what it was, what they were saying in English, which was pretty important. This is one, we've all seen this photo of the hundreds of thousands of bison skulls, and we talk about the railroad coming east, and I always talk about how fortunate I feel to have been so far out east, or our ancestors, my ancestors, to be so far out, west. And, for the railroad to, it didn't make it here till, which for a long time, which helped my ancestors hold on to our cultural ways and pass that down to our generations and keep us as strong as we are today. So I'm very fortunate. Sadly, bison got hit really hard. It made it a lot easier for hunters to come out and harvest. And then, we know with these photos, a lot of these skulls were sent back east and they were used for fertilizer. And, bison numbers crashed. So this is one wall we have with a short video, and if you have not seen In the Spirit of Atatitse, which I think we are actually having more films throughout the state, but it talks about our relationship with bison. It talks about our relationship with bison at the Bison Range and within Yellowstone. So in the late 1870s, one of our members from our Pend Oreille approached our leadership and noticed, how the numbers of bison were dwindling and asked to go get bison calves, and he was turned down. But he passed on his idea to his son, and his son went to our leadership, who then realized bison numbers were dwindling. And so he was allowed to go get orphaned bison calves from the Yellowstone area. So he came back with about 6, raised them up along the Flathead River, which again is really close to where the Bison Range is today. Actually, right along the river where that Bison Range is today. And they grew into a couple hundred. So remember I talked about when history is told by you, that's the important part, because sometimes when it's not, it's told incorrectly. So sadly, for hundreds of years, Atatitse's son, Flatatitse's stepdad, Flatatitse's stepdad was wrongly given credit for saving bison, Samuel Walking Coyote, which he did not. He just actually sold the herd when Flatatitse was away. So that's pretty sad that he was given credit. But they were sold to tribal members. The herd continued to grow to about 700, and it was one of the largest herds in the nation at that time. So Allard and Pablo were the tribal members who raised the herd. And again, Samuel Walking Coyote was wrongly given credit for that. A lot happened in this amount of time, so we'll talk about a little bit about 1904 with the Flathead allotment. And at that time, again, the bison herd on the reservation was about 700. We'll talk about, you know, in 1908, 1909, the American Bison Society convinced Congress to seize the 18,000 plus acres for the National Bison Range, which is implement, which means fenced in place in Salish. So again, if you have not watched In the Spirit of Atatitse, I would suggest that. It's a really good 28-minute video that talks about all of this. So this is the wall that we had put in talking about the allotment, and we talk about 1855 when the reservation was set aside for the exclusive use of CSKT tribal members. We briefly talked about 1908, 1909. That's when they came in and allotted land to households and adults, single adults. But after that happened, and I do have to point out allotments around the lake because that's not the same right now, but after that happened, there was over 1 million acres that they deemed surplus. So then came the land rush, then came the allotment, which allowed non-tribal members to move on to the reservation. Two, though, I want you to look forward to 2021, and we even have parcels of land within our Aboriginal territory that we have purchased within the Swan Valley, because those are very important areas as well. One represents the Swan Valley Massacre. I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but it was actually a hunting party from our area that traveled to the Swan Valley. They had their permits, which they didn't need because we are allowed to exercise our hunting and fishing and collecting outside of the reservation within our Aboriginal treaty area. And they had a confrontation with a game warden, state game warden, and there were shots fired. I think members of our party were shot, and then the game warden was shot as well. So ironically, one of the gentlemen that works for us at the Bison Range, his grandpa was born after his mom got back from that hunt. So his grandma survived, and his great grandma survived and gave birth to his grandpa. So he's here today. But so we have purchased property in the Swan Valley. That's one of the things too. My yaya, my grandmother, talks about. They would ride horseback into the Swan to go hunting, and when she was little, and so she would. She remembers her mom getting a letter from the schools, from the state, saying you have to send your daughter to school or we'll take her away. And so my great grandmother did, and she went to a little school in Arlee, and my grandma would run away. My yaya would run away, and they'd bring her back, and she'd run away, and they'd bring her back. And she said around the age of, like 7th grade, they did come get her. And so she really apologized to us for her not getting her education. And I told her, thank you for, getting what education she did from her family to help, educate us in our cultural ways. And so every dinner we'd had a big group. My mom's from one of 12 kids. So, we have big family dinners, and she'd always tell us, go get your education, but don't forget who you are. So that's why I'm here today. And one big thing that came full circle with that was we were gathering medicines with her, and she would tell me, because I went to college to learn the plants, and she had it from her ancestral teaching. And passing it down, she would tell me, we need yarrow. And so I would drive and go find us yarrow, and she would tell us, what it was used for. And she'd be like, we need this. And so I'd go drive. And so that was our connection, which was pretty amazing. Learned 2 different ways, but that was our connection. Because my mom and my aunt, who had gone to boarding school, didn't have either, which was sad. So I helped my mom. So this just kind of goes and kind of breaks that down each. This is photos of that surplus land opened in homesteaders. That was Joseph Dixon when the allotment passed. And this just talks about the land rush. So ultimately, over 400,000 acres of the reservation were given to homesteaders, and over 60,000 acres were granted to the state for school. So those are all these parcels. Then the government took even more land for irrigation canals, reservoir sites, and hydropower installation. So that actually is how the Bison Range came back to the tribe. So we were put on that water rights ballot and got the Bison Range. And at first when they put that on, I'm like, oh no, like they don't want us to have it back. It's not gonna happen, but thankfully it did. So we are currently now under, correcting canals, and as a wildlife biologist, some places where those canals were, and it was just sad to be put in the Jocko, concrete, and wildlife would get caught in them. So I'm super happy that we have the funding now to go and correct those. But here's a closer up of how we are. It's turning more green again. Our path to restoration, it kind of started in the early 1990s, which I was still in high school, just when it was getting started. One of our really good tribal chairman, Mickey T. Pablo, requested that the negotiations with the Department of Interior and Fish and Wildlife Service start, so the tribe could, help co-manage the Bison Range. And then there was, after 10 years of difficult negotiations, we reached a agreement, but there were 3 AFAs, and like I said, I did put in to be a biologist the second time around, and it was not a good time to be there. It wasn't supported, so it wasn't a good time to be there. But now it is. So this last time we worked all of 2020 is when it was given back, and then we actually worked cooperatively with Fish and Wildlife Service for close to a year, working together to try to, they were very good people on board. We worked very good with their wildlife program and had for years, so we still communicate with different projects, and so the last time it was definitely very helpful in helping the process. For this is not up yet. This is one of the things I'm working on right now. We are renaming the visitor center the Mickey T. Pablo Visitor Center because of his negotiations that began the process. And I did want to mention before, we've done a lot of work as far as one of my most fun projects too is the gift shop. We have, I think, about 60% of our vendors are tribal members from our reservation that we like to support. Then, we go within the reservation to non-tribal members because we have an amazing variety of vendors that do amazing things. And we try to just keep it as local as possible and then go out into the state of Montana. So it's pretty fun to be able to do that and provide stuff for our tribal, a venue for our tribal members to sell. Another big thing is school groups. We already have school groups calling. We already have school groups, and a lot of school groups, Corvallis and, we off-reservation school groups that want to come. And not to mention our locals. So it's pretty amazing. So we plan to be pretty busy with that as well. A lot of management, we're working on fences, we're working on, we are going to have a gathering this year. Unlike the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're not going to do that annually. We're going to let bison be bison in every other year. It's not hard to work with the 2-year-olds and the calves. And we're going to keep up with the genetics. They're one of the most studied bison herds, so we understand that's important. We do help other tribes augment their herd with genetics as well. We have lots of, now it's pretty exciting, like our future. You know, it's tribal land surrounded by tribal land, so we have a lot of opportunity to do different things. One thing we're looking at too in the future is the possibility of putting our, creating a new visitor center. I don't know if anyone has heard that. So at the top of Ravalli Hill, that's where we're kind of thinking. We did have within this last year worked with the state of Montana, and Big Medicine is going to be gifted back to the reservation, and he's in very fragile condition. He was 26 years old when he had passed. So we only want to move him once, and the current visitor center we have was built in 1981. We're still working on getting it ADA accessible. I mean, it's just in kind of poor shape, so we don't want to bring him there and have, you know, something bad. So yeah, we're looking at a new visitor center. We're looking at that would have a new entrance, so that Buffalo Prairie Drive could be a through drive. We'd have, for safety reasons, more than one exit or entrance and exit. So we are working on a lot of different things. So yeah, yeah, any questions?
About 5 years ago, 4 years ago, that I'm going to call it pneumonia got into the bighorn sheep herd. Is that stabilized? Are their numbers coming back? Or are they still dwindling?
Their numbers are still dwindling. However, again, that's probably one of the most studied sheep populations too, but but we have amazing photos that come from it. They do camera data and everything, but they actually had testing come back where that pneumonia is starting to, you know, dissipate. So we're just kind of trying to, the one issue that we have is we do have a domestic sheep herd off the range, and so I think that's, you know, one of the biggest battles is trying to work with the local domestic sheep growers. So yeah, our numbers are low right now, but I mean, you know, there's opportunity to work with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We do and have worked with them since I've been in the wildlife program. You know, when the numbers get too high on Wild Horse Island, we would, you know, augment our herds in Perma and, you know, our Hog Heaven herd with sheep from Wild Horse Island. So, you know, there are those possibilities. Our pronghorn population is also dwindling. I think both populations are close to, you know, anywhere from 15, 17 individuals in both populations. Coyotes are one of our biggest predators on our pronghorn, and right there, cultural. Like, coyote is one of our main important, you know, figures in our stories, and it's a coyote being a coyote, you know, he's coming in and eating pronghorn. So we're looking at that. I mean, there's a possibility of getting, Wyoming is overrun with pronghorn right now. So we're looking at testing and seeing if we could bring in more pronghorn, because they're a favorite. People love to see them. So yeah, our bison population, we had 60 calves this year. So they're doing well. A lot of our bison die of old age, you know, which is not a bad thing. Our elk population is doing well, as you know, as well. Our deer population as well. We had amazing, I don't know if you guys saw it on the news, this sow grizzly bear moved through middle of December with her two plump little cubs, and then I talked to a landowner on the east side. She was just moving through, and she was headed up to the mountains on his side. So wolves, we've had wolves this year, a couple different sightings of wolves. We have a really good healthy pack of wolves in the Pistol Creek area, so we are surrounded by some other populations. But yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing the variety of wildlife there. So
in the past, you sponsored some event for Migratory Bird Day in early May. Just wondering if there's any plan to do that this year.
So within our wildlife program, we did like a poster contest for our local schools. As far as the bison range, it might be something that we look at. Do you know what day that is this year? Is it towards the middle to end?
No, it's really like, I want to say May 5th,
Okay,
so it's before you open.
okay. So
It's
one,
before you open. Red
yeah,
Sleep
Red
Road.
Sleep, yeah. So one big event that we do have that I'm in charge of is our river honoring event. So we bring in 4th and 5th graders from on and off the reservation, and we celebrate the river. So that's the 8th, 9th, and 10th of May. So we'll have to look into that, because I know like this is the year we're talking about. We do have, our ecologist is looking at having, I was talking to Connie about that earlier, having a pull a weed, plant a seed event during Earth Day. So we might be advertising for that. So yeah, this is the year we're going to try to pull in more events. We did a kind of got stuff together and did a bat activity, during Bat Week for family members to come in. This year, I think we might try to do some bat boxes, so just kind of encourage, education about, everything that we can. So,
Will there be any rule changes for visiting?
one of our changes, so we do not receive federal funding anymore. So that's why this year we did raise our prices. Last year it was $10 per vehicle. This year it's $20 per vehicle for a day pass. And then our annual pass was $20 for the year per vehicle, and now it's $60. So that is probably our biggest change that we have happening this year. Like I said, having 1 year underneath us, we kind of, since the visitors we're gonna get, we did absorb some of the crazies, that come from Yellowstone and try to save the bison calves. We did have, and they all came in like 1 week, which is crazy, because in that week we had I think it was a son and a mom trying to pet a bison calf, which thankfully, I think one of our game wardens saw and saved them. And then we had two other different groups. They were young teenagers trying to chase down pronghorn. And so it's just, wildlife, the wildlife safety and protection is our number one because of our relationship, and that's kind of where we put ourselves. So yeah, protecting the wildlife is not so smart.
So I had heard about the plans to put the new visitor center in along 93 at the top of Rivali Hill, but I was wondering about the impact of the increased tourism going through the range and that sort of behavior going on.
Mm-hmm.
How would you address that?
It is amazing, which I, being out there for the year, how many people find you. And from, like there'd be days in the winter that I barely made it in my vehicle, and I'm used to driving these roads, and then you have someone show up from Texas and it's like, why are you on the roads? But they made it, and they're like, oh, we come every year. So, it's just, I think it's happening. It's happening anyway. And at one point we might have to look at the systems, that Glacier has, because again, the impact on the land, how are we going to protect that? The impact to the wildlife, how are we going to protect that? We are looking at the possibility of having tour buses, even tour buses on the boundary road where, that's just talk right now, but places where people haven't driven before, because it's an amazing large area. But having tour buses with people who can communicate and talk, and tell different things about the range, and then lessen the vehicles, you're all in a bus. So we've talked about, so many different things to try to make it, as little impact you know, and we still have a lot to do, work-wise. You know, because their federal funding was less and less, and their manpower was less and less, you know, things kind of started to, we're still trying to bring things up to speed, like I said, with the visitor center. We need to figure out how to do ADA. We're looking for grants right now for that, to lessen the climb to get to the visitor center. That's, you know, not okay for a lot of people. So roads, you know, Buffalo Prairie Drive is, you know, there should probably be cattle guards, guardrail, yeah, and we had some people, we had one person just drive off last year, and it's like, yeah, and probably looking at something, but you know, that road, it's all dirt road that, you know, we have to, you know, keep care of, and it does need some attention, so just trying to improve things as we go. I had a sign guy that was going to, you know, the signs on Red Sleep Drive have been there since the beginning, you know, animals rub on them, they're wood, they're degrading, so you know, as soon as we close Red Sleep Drive, I want you up there and we'll replace them. Well, we actually kept it open until the end of October this year, and then like the next week was snow, so winter came early. So hopefully in the spring we can get them up there and try to get them working on, you know, we don't want them up there when people are on roads as well. So just, you know, trying to make improvements, more pullouts down below. Yeah, just as many improvements as we can.
How do you see the overall management of the bison range change with the tribes as opposed to fishing officers?
I just think more manpower, and, you know, we have a huge weed problem, vetinata and cheatgrass, you know, we're just trying to keep that at bay and keep it, you know, and they were really trying to, but they didn't have the federal, you know, they didn't have the funding to do that. So hopefully, hopefully we can pull together more funding to, you know, allocate to these certain things, the upkeep, the roads, you know, I think they're funding. So I just think in positive ways like that, because as far as the, you know, years ago, they used to try to rest rotate, and you can't tell a bison where to go, you know, and you know how there's such a keystone species, and they move around the land, you know, so amazingly, that they realized, you know, that they don't need to rest rotate, and so that was a beautiful thing when they did that. So we are working on taking down interior fences, and another thing that they started doing, because, you know, as within the wildlife program, we would go help and assist with the captures. And so they started a calming, so less yelling and rattle cans and, you know, and more of a calming, less stress approach. And they started implementing that about 2 years ago. So now the bison, you know, you move with the bison, you let the bison move, you know, and you know, so it's, I think things, they were starting to go in the right direction. I think they just were, you know, didn't have the manpower or the funding to do that. So yeah, I think that's probably it, because they, you know, and like I said, we've been collaborating with them for the past few years, so they're helping us get the ball rolling.
You mentioned briefly genetics. So you don't really more about it. They're not all the same.
No, but thank you, because I didn't finish that story, sorry. So when the allotment happened, in came fences. There were actual allotments on the bison range that were forced to move. We actually had pictures of people in homesteads on the bison range. But once the allotment happened, fences moved. Pablo and Allard were forced to sell their herd, so they gathered them in the town of Ravalli, the city of Ravalli. So you can see those amazing photos of them, you know, being put on trains. They sadly could not find an owner within the States, and so they were sold to Canada. Ironically, when the bison ranch was formed, where it is right now, they needed bison. And so ancestors from the original bison that were in that area were brought back to the bison range, and then some were even sent to Yellowstone Park to increase their population, help their population. So, yeah, I mean, genetics, I mean, there's, since then, they've been pulled in from several different herds. Again, we use ours to augment other herds and other tribes. So, I don't know, I'm not big into the genetics as far as like my knowledge of it, but I can tell you that much.
I was there last year, first, two things. One of which was it was the biggest boom of bitterroot. I had never witnessed that last year. And then the other thing is walking down from the over the roof areas. I noticed you're using some biologicals in some of the rooms.
Yeah, and they have been as well. But yes, so the knapweed weevils have been used and we're still using. And yeah, St. John's wort they've been using, yeah. So they had started that, and then we are just able to push it even more. So yeah, you know how long you have to wait to see how, but it's better. So yeah, and we have a very enthusiastic ecologist who, has, and again, we're talking to Fish and Wildlife Service on what did you do, what, how does that not react to this treatment and this treatment. So, there's just lots of conversation and, they're like, this is what we would like to have done if we had the funding. And so, different applications that we'll try and, yeah, so just improving each year is what we're hoping to do, because it is a special place, it is. I live 20 minutes from there, and to me, it's almost like anytime I travel to the river, because the river ottering is one thing, like I get so, I work so hard to get this happening, and you get down there, and it's just like, it's just so peaceful. One of the things that too might be changing, you don't get phone reception there. It's not, but it's kind of a blessing in disguise unless you have to work there, and then it's hard. But that is coming soon, just because they're trying to connect things within town. So and that helps us do more. That helps us that we could provide a road tour. Where you could maybe tune in on your radio. We can provide so much education with QR codes. Like it just, yeah, I'm super excited. So, yeah, we just hope to improve as we go. It's a combo. So we had some funding. I'm trying to remember the name of it that they had. So they had projects that they were working on and had planned to work on. And so we are using that funding source because it was granted to them. So we have that funding source. We have our tribal funding source that we're using as well. But again, yeah, we're not receiving federal funds. So the tribe is kind of giving us a budget and hoping we can, as soon as we get caught up with things, hopefully we can live in this budget and make it happen. So.
Any other questions? So if we come out with a future for us, let you guys know we're coming,
Yeah,
or?
yes, please, that would be great. And then if we could even, guide you different places or whatever, yeah, that would be great.
All right, well, thanks.
Thanks.